The fourth habit is sleep. Simply put, this is the most important thing you're not doing. And when we look at sleep, it's easily the miracle supplement. So we get a lot of conversations about, hey, what supplement should I take? What should I do from a nutritional standpoint? How do I best optimize what I'm doing here in the weight room? The easiest thing is sleep more. Bottom line, fact, bar none, it's the most powerful thing that we could do on a daily basis, yet we prioritize it so low in the hierarchy of things we should do in a given day that we are leaving so much value from the stuff that we're doing in our workouts and our nutritional interventions that we're trying to do. So the research is overwhelming and compelling in what not sleeping enough really does to our body and our performance, right? So sleeping on average 6 hours or less consistently every night almost gets this performance outcome that puts us at a higher risk for injury, diminishes the value from our workouts and what we're trying to do in terms of cognitive function. It's almost at a point where if I'm not sleeping enough, I'm running at a suboptimal version of myself that I could quickly fix by getting a little bit more sleep. So the big thing is 8 hours. And what I don't want to do is say this is something that everyone should inherently know or everyone should inherently understand, because if that was true, we'd see that more. And what we want to get across is, just like we want to start off every day with mobility so we have greater potential from what we're doing, we want to precede that with 8 hours of quality sleep to get even more benefit from what we're doing. So everything is layered and compounding and building upon the other thing, and it starts off with getting 8 hours of sleep. One of the things that we see a lot is people with blood sugar dysregulation. So people who sleep under 6 hours a night have blood sugar dysregulation. So they don't respond the same level to carbohydrates as they should. They have huge spikes, insulin goes rampant, and then all of a sudden we start to store a lot of body fat in our midsection. And this manifests over time into stress-related diseases, right? We can look at people at higher risk for cardiovascular disease, people at higher risk for metabolic disease, all traced back probably to number one issue, not sleeping enough. So something as simple as sleeping more and sleeping consistently 8 hours, all of a sudden I manage blood sugar better and I have better cortisol function. So going into the cortisol, we want to look at everything we do works off this natural rhythm. So that circadian rhythm, or that sleep-wake cycle, sets the foundation for everything we do. So we wake up in the morning, we should have the highest levels of cortisol that we should have throughout the given day. And cortisol is a stress hormone, so a lot of people aren't aware of what cortisol is. But cortisol is our way to wake up, have energy without food. So we've just fasted for the last 8 to 10 hours. Cortisol actually creates energy from my fuel substrates for my body, specifically fat. So I start to raise cortisol, and I start to break down fatty acid or fatty tissues in my body to create energy so I can start to do stuff without as much energy surplus as I need. So traditionally, we have to go procure food. We have to go hunt and gather our food. Until modern times, we really didn't have the luxury of having breakfast at our disposal. So naturally, our bodies are equipped to create energy without having direct energy from calories coming in. So when we wake up, cortisol should be high, and we see a steady decline throughout the day because now we can procure food and we can eat food that we've hunted and gathered. We obviously have a lot more modern amenities, so food's more accessible, but that still should follow that same rhythm. What happens though is we have blood sugar dysregulation because we're not sleeping well enough. We start to spike insulin, and cortisol starts to function a little bit differently. We have high amounts of stress throughout the day, whether it's work, family, working out, whatever, and we start to see cortisol start to fluctuate or even raise throughout the day. So when I'm starting to rest and digest and get ready for a deep night's sleep, I should see melatonin go up and cortisol go down, but we're not seeing that. Whether we see a flat line of cortisol throughout the day, or we start to see a very high spike of cortisol when we're trying to go down and go to sleep. So one of the things that we want to go through here is setting a natural circadian rhythm. And the simplest, easiest thing to do is go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day. And I know that's a huge challenge, but if we prioritize that, man, everything else that we want to get from any protocol or supplement is going to be that much more impactful. So if we use a protein powder, if we use a carbohydrate powder, if we use anything to regulate blood sugar or give us more energy, it'll be that much more impactful because simply I'm just going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time because I've managed cortisol, I manage insulin, I manage these things called epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are catecholamines, which go into effect to help procure energy when cortisol is not doing its job. I can get more impact from what I'm doing. And all of a sudden, holding body fat around my midsection starts to organically change. I start to hold on to less fat. I start to have more energy. I start to recover faster, simply just by going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time. But what also it does, it sets our schedule as that the most important 8-hour block we have in our given day. So when we look at our calendar, I have a meeting at 7, I have to work out at 8, I have to do this, this, and this. We should be first thinking about my first most important appointment is going to bed at 10 and waking up at 6. If I have to get up at 5, I'm going to bed at 9 and wake up at 5. If I have to set my schedule, I want to set my schedule around when I'm going to bed and when I'm waking first and foremost to have 8 hours. And that rhythm that we're talking about in terms of creating cortisol at the right time starts to work a little bit better. I start to get tired at the right time so I can get deeper, more restful sleep. Everything I do is going to be really reliant on how well and how consistently well I'm sleeping. So that's going to be probably above all else. Anything that we might do in terms of nutritional interventions or supplements or protocols is all going to be contingent upon the backbone of how well and how consistently well we sleep. So the challenge is, one, we're going to get 8 hours of sleep. That's the goal. Some of us might be sleeping 4 hours a night. If we can get to 5, that's a step in the right direction. It doesn't mean that we're there though. We want to strive to get to 8. So we need to condition our bodies and literally our mind and psyche to get 8 hours. So we're building up to it. Just like we progressively overload on squat or bench or deadlift or pull-ups, we want to progressively overload to get you closer to 8 hours. That's our goal. So that's where we're looking for a foundational piece. If you're sleeping 8, if we can get 8.5, 9, great. That's awesome. You're already a step ahead. But that's the goal, is to try to get 8 hours. And setting our clock and setting our calendar to get that same sleep and wake schedule is the second part of this challenge. So 8 hours, wherever I can get it, right? So if I got to go to bed at 10, okay, I'm not waking up till 6. I have to think about that framework to get 8 hours is the most critical piece to everything else I want to do in my life, right? So if I want to work out, get stronger, get bigger, get leaner, whatever, I need to sleep 8 hours. The part that we're going to do that and help this challenge along is what we're trying to look at before that. So a lot of times we have a lot of exciting or facilitating things to getting crappy night's sleep. So a lot of blue light, a lot of things that are entertaining, or a lot of things that are engaging. If we see pupils dilate, it probably means that we're excited and we're not trying to get a good night's sleep. So the body perceives light as it's middle of the day, so we need to start to condition ourselves to remove blue light. So before we go to bed, we have to remove electronics, we have to remove cell phones, TVs, tablets, etc., so we can get that mind and that body ready to go to bed at a certain time. If the body starts to perceive light from an external substance, it thinks it's midday and it's not ready to go to bed. And we start to see cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine start to rise. So removing blue light an hour before we go to bed might give you that edge to help you go to bed at that certain time. So I set my schedule, I'm going to go to bed at 10. We got to start removing electronics at 9. And we want to substitute that with rest and digest type of things. Sleep is contingent upon how well my body is conditioned to go to bed at that certain time. So doing things like reading, journaling, stuff that doesn't bring a lot of light and is not excitatory, right? We want to get more conditioned to go to bed at a certain time. So when I hit that pillow, I organically fall asleep, so it's not just tossing and turning for 8 hours. And what the other part is, when I wake up at the same time, my body starts to develop these rhythms to start to slow down and start to raise melatonin and lower cortisol at specific times throughout the day, so I can go to bed at a certain time and do that consistently. So consistently getting 8 hours is a process of what I put into before that. So that's the two biggest parts of the challenge. Challenge 1, getting 8 hours and setting up our schedule around that. Second part of that challenge is removing excitatory things like blue light and stimulating activities before I go to bed so I can get deep, restful sleep.